Yep, recording is on progress, I think. Yep. So will this actually easify our life if it is so idealistic that this three creation of an object being, selecting a pattern which falls under creational, and we create the objects, and then we deal with the relationships, how to relate those objects, and then for the same reason we'll just select one structural pattern, and then we will select another good pattern available in behavioral depending on the context and our scenario, and we make them communicate in an optimized way. So if we do this, will it work in every case? So that's where the cons appear in design patterns. Yes, it is optimized, but then the guys who actually published these three things, these three set of uh, patterns, they are not gods, right? So they are just humans. So there comes the part of ego for a developer. Developers were not interested to implement these design patterns just because they were introduced in late 80s, and then they're optimized by the word of mouth. And the one main reason is they are not feeling themselves as they are doing a creative job. So for example, if you have yesterday I've shown you the templates, right? The design pattern templates. Each design pattern has some templates. I have shown you in my GitHub code, right? So what you can do is now simply select your design pattern. For example, if you're constructing a website, you just select a builder pattern and copy paste the builder pattern code, collect your objects, name your objects accordingly, a research of about 10 minutes, and your code is ready to be developed. And once you have your logics, you just implant the objects by copy paste mode, rename the objects, define the relations. Make sure that this the code that you developed is following the pattern. That's it. End of the story. It's like, it's not a creative job. It's like a mold that you're having, a clay mold. Let us say you're importing your clay or any other material, and your mold is ready. It's not creative. So they say that these molds are already existing, but there is always a way to optimize these molds. So for the same reason, if you search for Google, maybe, which will be confusing about this design patterns, I agree, but still, apart from these design patterns, what we have in the list of these three available design patterns, we see a couple of more design patterns available in the market. So for example, if you see creational, the GOF has introduced only 5, but we do find a lot in the web, but the standardized patented one will be 5 from the gang of 4. And, if you take structural, you'll be finding some 7, and about the behavioral, you'll be finding something around 10 or 11. So that's about the pros and cons, but if you implement them once or twice or thrice, your way or method of developing a software becomes a lot easier for you, because we are not talking on how to derive the logic, but how to implement or represent the logic. So actually these are not sophisticated or complex or something which we think of. We only need a hand on it. If you get a hand on it, it'll be like you'll be writing the code like anything. So having said that, before going further, in order to develop a software, there are a few things that we discussed yesterday. Apart from that, we missed discussing about something else that is called as cost effectiveness. Your software has to be cost effective. I mean, your framework needs to deal with this. So how to make your framework a cost effective one? One good way is, so when you are about to extract your data from your database, nowadays, the data previously, maybe earlier back then to 5 years or 6 years, you'll be calling data as data, maybe data stream or something. But now you're calling it as lake, Lake in the sense it's about big data, Hadoop's lake, data lake we say, or any other big data systems lake we say, because it is not data anymore. It has become a lake. It's not a pond. It's not a simple crumbs of data. It's a lake. So after a few days, after a few more years, maybe 2 or 3, it's not so far. We may call it as a river. We may call it as an ocean too. So the data is vastly doubling and tripling day by day. So
Mm-hmm.
the point is, if you want to hit billions of data records from your database for every request, um, so for example, you have an API interface for Facebook, let's say. You're collecting your data from Facebook, your own data, let's say your profile data, your chat records. So you hit an API using Python, a request module. A simple way to hit is request.get of your URL and then API key. But then you, as you're already aware that Facebook's database is humongous. So extracting your own data is pretty much troublesome for you, right? So it needs to search over the billions of records in the existing entities, unless it is optimized or segregated or partitioned, or it has secondary indexes over this. So this is another thing, but still, on an abstract part, it is very hard to search for over a billion records over a single database of Facebook. So
Mm-hmm.
what you can do is, in order to maximize or optimize your cost, you can have a cache built for your own system. Suppose you're a company or you're having a software which deals with the extraction of your Facebook data day by day. So you are having clients all over the world. They'll get their data, maybe the chats, posts, memories, blah blah blah, from Facebook, their own profiles or something like that. I may not have been. It may not be the proper example to discuss, but what I'm trying to tell is, so yeah. For example, there is something called Policy Bazaar or Paisa Bazaar in India, if you are aware of. So what they do is, I'm sure you will be having similar kinds of setups in UK also. So they'll just gather the credit cards from different banks, personal loans from different banks, and then they'll contact other people who are in need of personal loans, and then they stand as a bridge between the clients and the bank providers. I mean, the personal loan providers, credit card providers. That's how they earn a lot. So they are called fintech companies. So what happens is, these guys are in need of data extraction from different clients. So let's say Citibank is releasing some few credit cards. This is called as affiliate marketing. So I'm promoting your Citibank credit cards. I have a right to know the data on the clicks, impressions, the customers that brought your credit card on my behalf, right? So they will provide you the APIs through which you extract the data. This is a very common phenomena you come across: extraction of data through APIs from your source systems. So if you want to do that extraction, if it is a very bulk extraction, which happens to be in the regular case, uh, you cannot. It is a lot of cost effective. Point one, and you cannot afford to make that happen for just an extraction of data, because analysis part still may take another bunch of pounds. So it's like you need to optimize your system from the very beginning. So what one good approach we can think of is, how to optimize the extraction of data. Any idea?
No.
So one flexible standard approach we follow is caching the data. So when you speak about caching the data, there are a couple of instances. Again, it's like design pattern. So there is a method, there's an algorithm that we introduce for caching the data. Again, it gets modified. It may get advanced. It may get degraded some depending on your scenario. So the tuning happens depending on the scenario. We call it as dynamic caching. We call it as lazy load. We call it as normal caching, we call it as LRU caching. So there are a couple of algorithms that we introduced into the market for segregating the types of caching. So what is this caching meant for? So if you open your Chrome browser, uh, if you are surfing your internet for a week or so, there will be some caching happening. If you want to delete the entire history's cookies cache of your browser, if you are in Chrome, you can press Control Shift Delete, and then it will show that the cookies cache history, blah blah blah, right? So that cache will be cached in a folder called CASHE that will be present inside your browser files. So what it exactly does is, whenever uh, whenever you search for a website, whenever you crawl into a website, so it will store that local copy of that website. Before that, whenever you want to access a web page, what you will do, there is a request that you will do for a web browser, and that web browser tries to prompt that request, and then it will try to receive the data. I'm not spelling my, yeah, receive the data. So this is called as response. So this request response pair is called, it may be called as a coupling in physical terms, but not in ID terms. So couple is complete when a request and a response is done. So that's just for justifying or an understanding purpose. So a successful request and response, when it happens, that's where your page gets displayed or loaded. When your successful request and response is done for once, that web page, after it gets displayed, that very moment, that web page will be cached based on a logic. The logic is not revealed and it depends on the browser. Also, a browser maintains multiple caching techniques. That's another thing. We'll go into the details later, but still now on a core level. So this caching is an important phenomena for improving the loading standards. If you want to if you want to download Chrome, if you go to Google, there's a marketing sentence. I mean, there are a couple of marketing sentences for Google. So, I mean, for downloading Chrome, Chrome is the fastest browser, fastest in the sense, definitely they are trying to be faster when compared to Safari or Opera or IE. I mean, in the sense, if you're hitting www.facebook.com in your Google Chrome is saying that this facebook.com is loading faster in our browser when compared to the facebook.com loading that is happening in other browser. So how are they achieving it? I mean, it doesn't matter if it is true or fake, but the context is how are they trying to at least do that. It is one of the ways is caching. There are a couple of other ways we'll discuss later, but still now, this caching is nothing but storing a temporary application and then reusing it for the second time. So that cached file, the cached data will be reused. But this is on UI end. Maybe the web page you're loading, it may be in KBs, most probably in hundreds of KBs, that's it, at a max. But still it matters for them. But if you see the real use case scenario for your backend development, when I discussed about this Policy Bazaar, Paisa Bazaar, Nerd Wallet, there were US companies and Indian companies. So they do have a requirement or a need to extract humongous data almost every day. So if you consider marketing platforms, they have a requirement to extract the data on an hourly basis. If you see your email, out of 10,000 mails, maybe 8,000, more than 8,000 are spam mails, right? So like that, every guy or every person who creates a Gmail is spammed up nowadays. You can imagine what an extent of email marketing is happening. So we all recently built bulk email platform extraction setup in my company. That extraction setup, we finished it long ago for MailChimp. It's another bulk email platform. Now we are almost done with Iterable. It's another bulk mailing platform. So what we do is we need to extract the data hourly basis, right? It's a very costly, cost-effective thing. What if our database is SAP HANA? What if our database is Teradata? It's again more cost-effective. So what we will do is we create a class for the first time, and then we never use that class. The class is used to extract the data only once. I mean, if you it depends again on your use case. So you extract your class data and store it over there, and then you use that cache data all across. But then, if you're using Python, there is another option called pickling. Uh, I'm not sure if you have heard about it, but pickling, what it does is it will convert the entire data that you're trying to process into a pickle. Pickle in the sense a byte stream, which is a very optimized code. It doesn't have any difference between, I mean, when you say hello world in a text and you pickle that hello world, it will be converted into byte streams. Byte streams in the sense you cannot even recognize that code. It's all special symbols. So that one is optimized code to send packets and to receive the packets. So the transfer of that will be in byte streams, and when the byte stream, there are two advantages of it. So one, it is optimized, memory efficient, and lightweight to be transferred, that byte stream. And the second one is it is decoded already. No one can just like open and see it unless he has some Python knowledge. So having said that, before I introduce cache, I need to introduce pickling. That's what I meant to.
Right. Sorry, Hari, on this note, can I just ask a quick question? I mean, it's not a question, but probably a scenario which I faced. Can that be solved using this concept? Okay. So the thing is, like, I'm extracting the feeds, the news feeds on daily basis.
Okay.
Okay. So when I extract the feed has got some link, and when you click on that link, it takes you to the news article. Right. So say for example, like today I have extracted, it has got like 50 feeds, which I extracted. I clicked on the link, I retrieved the news article, stored it. Okay. And tomorrow when I go back and get my feeds, out of 50 feeds, 20 feeds have been replaced with the new one. Okay. So when I click the link which I retrieved, I mean, I got some feeds yesterday, but when I click on that particular link, the feed no longer exists.
Okay.
Okay. So is it something like, can that particular article be cached? Or is
What
there
do
a
you
way
mean
to
by no longer exists?
no longer exists is because, like, say you have got like 50 feeds that has been extracted yesterday.
Okay.
Out of 50 feeds, 20 feeds have been replaced. When you extract the data again today, 20 feeds have been vanished. 20 feeds have been like the latest data.
No, feed will never vanish, right? Okay, it's not in the latest list. You're saying you're collecting only
Yeah,
new
it is.
stats.
Yeah, it is not in the latest list.
Okay, fine. And then, okay, can this be optimized? Yes, the thing is, what you can do is you need to have if case statements. I'll discuss about that too. So your pattern comes under observer pattern. So we'll discuss that in a couple of minutes so that you'll understand more on what you can do. Observer pattern is something related to building up chatbots or communication between the clients. They usually request and response kind of a thing. It is also. So for example, there's a pattern that you need to build where it will request for an updation that happens. So if at all there is an updation in the feed, then you'll collect the feed. Otherwise, you'll keep that field as is. So there is a particular validation that you need to do. So we'll discuss that now in a while.
Okay.
But pickling does not have any effect here because pickling is to compress and optimize the data or secure the data. And yeah, let me just grab some code here. So I just declared a dictionary, Alice Bob Charles, the famous example. So if we have already discussed JSON module, which I probably believe we did. JSON module is like import JSON, and then there are two methods used into this. Sorry.
Yeah, you have dumps and load.
Yeah. JSON dump as load. I mean JSON dump as load as. These are for converting into converting string into JSON dictionary. We use load and load as. Converting JSON dictionary to JSON string, we use dump and dump as. So the format and syntax will be the same for the pickling also. So what you will do in pickling is the same. Dump as dump, load as load. So all four works here. Just when you declare pickle dot dump as of the object, it will just create. So it will just create a byte stream of code. In the sense, you cannot really say what it is actually all about. Let me just share my screen in another way. I don't know how to actually handle this. Okay, fine. I'll figure it out later. So if you see this, I just copy pasted that code. So this is nothing but a dictionary, and then I'm using this dump as operator over this dictionary, and then printing it out. So this is the byte stream of code that you'll get. And so my notes look always clumsy. Gosh, I need to clean up everything. That's just okay. So now when I print this out, I'll just this bytes get this byte string codes equivalent to this. So now when I do load s on that object, now I mean the serial grades now handles the byte stream. When I do this load s, I'll get this back again. So at this point, you may not be able to understand or appreciate this part, what it is doing, but you may appreciate the decoding part. But then it is lightweight, and then it says a lot of memory. So that's about a simple pickling, and pickling is a very important on the context of an interview aspect. So JSON and pickling, these both are very important, because they would at least expect you that you will be knowing these things when you are having bulk extraction of data and stuff like that. So coming back to our thing, so this is one way of handling a huge data. And then we have a couple of other techniques of building your own caches depending on your requirement. That's again falls under algorithms and data structures. We are not, that's not the topic for today. Let's save it later, because this is about patterns. Just we don't enter into algorithms. So now coming back to the creational patterns, we'll have a quick overview about the creational patterns for now. If at all you need any detailed description, or if at all it helps you in your setup, then we can go through them in a very detailed manner. So first thing is there is something called abstract factory pattern, and there's another thing called factory pattern. There's something called singleton pattern. These three are, and there's something called builder pattern. These are commonly used use cases. So basically, step one or level one will be factory. If the scenario gets more complicated, it will become abstract factory. Singleton is the simplest design pattern, and builder doesn't relate with the above three.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. If you want me to show the builder in a practical way, the way we implemented, we can show it right away also. Yeah, we'll discuss about that also as well. So um, the factory pattern that we are speaking about, it creates a factory class, and it will just it's what does a factory do? It just creates the objects, like let's say a car factory or a bike factory. It will prepare different kinds of bikes and then release into the market. It's just like that. So a factory is the class on which you'll be operating on, and the input objects for you may be, so for example, if it is a car class, your factory class is car, your input objects may be like um, maybe a hatchback, or maybe a MV, MUV, SUV, or whatever. So all types of cars will be the inputs of this factory class. Like that, all types of shapes for a shape builder. Maybe that may be the context for your factory class. So what your class should be in such a way is that it should be able to handle all kinds of flavors that can be inserted into your factory pattern. So mhm, I'll just share you another sample code. So this, I think, should be good. Let's come back to a singleton later. So factory pattern, if you see this, it's just an interface for creating an object. That's it. And you're hitting that interface. It means you need to make this interface, whatever you're calling as an interface, in a separate independent file. And specifically speaking, if you are implementing this factory pattern, you need to deal with packages. Package in the sense, I mean the standard again. Doesn't I'm not saying that it will not work if you don't do that, but the standard. So package in the sense, you'll be having a set of files in a folder along with a file called underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py. That whole bunch is called as a package. Whenever there's an init file in that folder, you can right away import the files inside that based on the relational basis. So even you can import the files inside a nested folder in that folder. So when we discussed about that when you are dealing with modules and packages. So what you will do is this interface object that you define will be a separate set of files. As we know the difference between interface class and then abstract class and a concrete class. So abstract class may have the methods, I mean the fully functional concrete methods. I mean the logic can be inside that abstract, but interface, it is just an interface.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what it is actually. For example, this one, it's just a shape interface, and its duty is to draw. And you do not define any logic inside it. I mean, what kind of draw you need to make, but you know that you need to do something which is nothing but a draw. And this shape interface will be inherited by the products. It means your robots in your car factory are built for building a machine. That's it. Is it a hatchback? Then there is a separate set of algorithms it will follow. If it is a SUV, there are separate set of algorithms it will follow. There are some 4 or 5 segregation of the steps of work you define, and then your input arguments. So, for example, press 1 to add 2 tables. I mean 2 numbers. Press 2 to multiply 2 numbers. Press 3 to do another thing like that. It's just giving an option and then your factory is constrained to perform only a single thing. But that's a basic gist of your factory pattern. But the cons of this here is, you already know that you're making cars. It means that it's no longer a factory, it's a car factory. And it's not a bike factory, it's not a lorry factory, it's not another factory. So the interface that you have provided for your client is already visible, transparent. It may have any impact based on your requirement again. So I'll go ahead and maybe I expand my car factory to bikes. In that case, this is no longer valid, right? So what I will do is I'll just complicate a bit more scenario. I'll build factory of factories, in the sense, uh, where's this whiteboard? Okay, fine. So I just create a factory of factories, which is nothing but abstract factory. As the name indicates, I'm saying that this abstract factory is also called, considered as factories, factory of factories. In a sense, there is a factory which builds other factories. In turn, the factories will build their own products. So it's one level ahead of this factory design pattern. It means there is an abstract class that we declare. It means it does not allow the data members inside it. It will only have, it will not, it will only have, it may have the concrete methods, it's another story, but then it will just have the abstract methods, one or more at least abstract methods inside it. And the usual practice is will optimize or minimize the concrete methods. I mean the concrete methods in the sense which has implementation. I mean the main logic, the usual instance methods. So this abstract factory is an abstract class which is an independent file again, and we make sure that these factory classes, the second level, they should function only by inheriting this abstract factory, because they are linked up like that. And then these factories in turn individually act as a factory design pattern. You got that right?
No.
Oh, okay. So now you're having this shape interface which is having a single duty called shape, but can you impart any color with this?
No.
So color, for coloring you'll have to send it to another factory, right? So you're now trying to access another package now. So this factory design pattern is a simplistic form of this factory so-called patterns, where you'll club the things together in one file, and then you keep your factory in another file. You try to access it. It's constrained. If at all you need another factory to be applied, you need to access another package. So it's like multi-level inheritance, right? So in this case, if you want to add another thing called color, you'll have to make color interface maybe, and then you'll have to perform it. But in real time, it's not like just a simple thing here, right? You may also have to pass, I don't think of anything, maybe dimension factory or something like that. So some ABC, some BCD. So this is not at all appreciable because inheritance creates a lot of disturbance for us. That's what we discussed earlier, right? So abstract factory will segregate such complex scenarios. So what you will do is you kind of create, this is this two files, these two lines of code will be another file. I mean, included the logic in real time speaking. So, and then this color interface will be another one. and then like that there are other sort of things. Interface it is. So we'll just list out all the interfaces, and then we will change these to methods. In the sense, you will have, you don't no longer will have shape interface here. You'll have some abstract factory interface or something like that as per the relevant name, and all these interfaces will be linked up here. It will form the abstract factory. That will be one file, and then there will be another files or another modules, and this being abstract, it will just call out all these functions. If you are supposed to go for shape, then call this shape factory. So now in another file you give shape factory. This is just like segregating, or what is it? This is like cleaning up your code in a simpler way. So I mean, it's all about the representation of your code, and this is like there's a certain other set of methods that that may include the functionality. This is now interface model, and this is now abstract model. So abstract followed by interface, and then comes your concrete models like the logic, actual logic.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yep.
So that's about your abstract factory class. Yep. We take the help of something called new attribute to build that. I'll come back to that just in few minutes, what a new is. In order to understand that, you need to go on a higher level on this singleton pattern. Okay. Singleton is the simplest form of a pattern, design pattern. So what it does is, it will limit or restrict the instances of the output. It means no matter, so for example, if I want to, if I define a class called some ABC or EMP class, create instance one, some blah blah blinds. Okay, fine. I'll make use of this Sublime itself. So if I declare something like this, instance one is equal to EMP of, so print in1, I got something like this. Print in2 is equal to EMP of print this. Now I got the IDs here, right? The instance IDs. It is like, I mean, it's a kind of a storage that is happening inside a heap. And let's say, for example, class ABC, and then pass. Now what I will do is in3 is equal to, I'll just instantiate this. When I do this, if you see here, this is 8B0850 something else. So it means each instance is having another object created inside your heap. You pretty much understand about the objects in Python, right? Because an object is actually created whenever there is a reference, another reference happening into that. So again, speaking about these variables, a is equal to 2, b is equal to 2. It is only one object. Variables are just referring to that object. But now in here, the IDs are changing. So singleton will restrict the amount of IDs, I mean the number of instances or the objects that we can create. So How to do that? This new attribute will take care of creating the instances. This is a special addition for Python oops available. So what it does is it is by default a class method, and then what it does is it will return an instance. It can return an instance. It's not a hard stop that it should return an instance, but it will usually return an instance. So it means what we are checking here is we are declaring a private variable none, and we are assigning that as an instance as the return type of this new attribute, which is in general an instance, unless you declare some return 3 or 2, which is just a static variable or a value. So this instance is nothing but a return value of this new attribute, which means that we are dealing with an instance. So if that class dot underscore instance, I mean, what I'm saying is if not class dot instance, in the sense, this one, I can, if none print hey there, will it print? It will not, right? So if not none, then it will print. So this the same thing here. If the instance is not already created, which will not be for the first time, it means for the first time that you're creating an instance. I mean, here, in case of in1, it is the first time that you're creating an instance, right? So in that case, it will just go and allocate that instance. I mean, I'm allocating that private object to that new attribute, which will have a return type of instance. That's how class.instance is having an instance that is created, right? So if you come back to creating like in2 is equal to again hitting that, if not cls.instance will never come because it is not none at all. It is no more none. So the next thing what it does is it will return this class instance. Got this right?
Yeah.
So if you play around with this, so maybe I can just right away declare something. This is having some ID. You see this, the IDs they are referencing is to the same instance. It means they are pointing to the same instance. So that's the whole point of the singleton. But what we are doing, we are forcing it to create a single instance or use the same single instance. But we can also limit the instances just like this. This is just a track of we just limit the instances at times. I just copy pasted that code from that setup itself. So what we are doing is if not class.instance, it means if not none, which will be limiting to only one. Instead of that, I mean, in this case, what we have done is we'll just calculating the length of class instances. I mean, we just declared a list. It's just like a count when count is less than this, like that. Every time it will, the whole point is every time it will go into this instance, it will create a new instance. We are restricting this one in that case. So for example, you can even do this. So count is equal to 5. If not this, then and count is less than 5. Then do this, and then count plus 1. Count plus is equal to 1. So what will happen for the first time? It is none, so it is created. And the second time, if this is not none, or I think we need to put it as or. So the second time it comes here, it is not none, right? And then or count is less than 5, which is true. Count is 1 now, right? Sorry, count is 0 to define here. For the first time, it will go on, and the count is incremented to 1. and then the count is 1, so another instance is created, and then increment is updated, count is now 2, again 3, 4, 5. When it is 5, we pretty much sure that this will never come to true, or this is also now false, so no instance is created. So at the single point of time, we'll be limiting the instances of a particular class to 5. So this is just one simple design pattern that comes into our mind when we speak about the creational design patterns. That's about singleton, factory, and abstract factory. Ibrahimovic got right. So why do we have singleton? Why do we have abstract factory and all?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And what we will do is we'll move on to further strategy pattern we discussed in detail yesterday. Maximize cohesion, minimize coupling is done.
Change responsibility.
Yeah, observer pattern. So this is both the discussion. This is kind of similar or relevant to network architectures. So what happens is and then I'll take a draw button. So there is a sender of a signal, and there is another receiver, there is another receiver, there is a receiver, there is a receiver, like that. There are a bunch of receivers. One simple example is you'll get if you subscribe for any updates on a blog, you'll get updates whenever there's a new post published in your blog. You'll get updates to your email. You also, if you have subscribed to any supervisors notifications by giving them your phone number, you'll get notifications whenever there is an offer, new product available, or festive season offer, so blah blah blah. So it's like the similar kind of a thing with observer pattern. So the concept here is there is some senders and receivers. Here the sender is only one and the receivers are many, and the sender tries whenever the data of this database inside this sender is updated, the concept is the receivers needs to get notified. So what needs to be done for the receivers to get these updates? They'll have to continuously poke, right? Since this annotation don't like it. So they'll have to continuously poke this guy for updates. If at all there is an update, they'll just update in their database as well. So how long, at what interval they will do that? If they are poking up for a day, it means once in a day. What if the database changes for 10 times in a day? They'll be missing all those 9 updates. It means they're not tracking the way they are updating, right? So for example, they're updating for 6 months, let us say, for a cricket team. So Kohli is batting for maybe for 10 matches once they're updating. So Virat Kohli is batting. So for 10 games, out of which 10th game he's playing very well, and then rest of the 9 games he's not playing at all. In that case, their estimations will go wrong. So in order to make sure that these are not wrong, they'll have to continuously poke it minute by minute, second by second, instance by instance, moment by moment, right? So this is now becomes a clumsy thing. The network looks a lot hybrid here. So if you see this case, it's okay. But if you see for the network circuitings that come into picture when you're dealing with the network, if you have any idea about AWS, that's where AWS or Azure, that's where the cloud setup will allow a window for all the resources to operate. I mean, an IT architect. So every resource will have something called DNS. It's
Hmm.
naming given to the IP. The IP. I mean, every resource in order to access it, you'll have an IP, like a local host, local host in the sense 127.0.0.1, and then port name, whatever you give. So like that, every resource will have an IP, and every IP can be alias to a DNS. DNS in the sense, Google.com is really not a Google.com. It is just an IP you are hitting, but the DNS of that Google.com is Google.com. That's just a name. It's basically, typically speaking, is a IPv4 address where you named it as google.com, where it will be redirected to that IP itself in the internals. So all these DNS services will be like, if you take a very fine example of AWS, it will have, let's say, some 500 resources maybe operating for a big a corporate level company. So all those 500 levels resources, they're looking for fetching this packets. I mean, they're literally trying for an open network socket so that they can communicate with the external internet. Let's say if they have a requirement of such. Or there is this amazing blog where people are going crazy about hitting that page. Let's say that very particular page is viewed by millions and millions every day. So continuously they'll be hitting that particular port from their ports to this particular web page, right? It all looks clumsy. You need to increase your bandwidth in the sense, these guys doesn't have any problem with the bandwidth. They are just single signals, but this guy needs to increase its bandwidth because all are hitting only this guy. So this is called polling strategy. I mean, the pole architecture. This is a primitive architecture. It was now advanced, and with a further advancement, it has come into push architecture. Push architecture means, in the sense, the very same reason why you're getting the mails. You never have to poke me around for anything. If at all my blog page changes, I'll be the one notifying you.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if the article changes for a week, this guy will push it around across just for once. Till now, what happens, this is all waste signals. For every movement, it is definitely, we are pretty sure that every movement it's not going to change. So it's a waste of resources and time for all those them to hit the here, right? So now instead, what this guy will do is, it will just push a notification whenever there is an update happening to his database. So there is that setup available for every kind of UI pattern or a UI software that you see. But you need to take a moment to search for it. So if you speak about the news feeds and all, if you're directly getting it from a Google, I mean, just through raw web scraping, you may have to rely on RSS feed. Have you
Right.
heard of RSS feed?
Yeah, I'm scraping the data from RSS feed.
Yes. So whenever there is a change in this RSS feed, that's where your target of hitting should happen.
Yes, right.
But the thing is, there are other type platforms. I mean, third party platforms. They'll notify you whenever there is a change in this RSS feed. But this one is a two-way communication. What we are talking is, you are still implementing pole architecture unknowingly, right? But the frequency you have managed somehow. Maybe you are hitting once in a week, right?
Yeah.
So this should be a push architecture where you need to catch up with the setup of whatever the engine you are following. This will definitely have a push architecture where it will push a notification for a modified RSS feeds. Or you can also design your algo in such a way that notify yourself, just like Git notification. Just notify yourself whenever there is an update happening. Not sure about the exact one what Google might be using, but there should be some push architecture. You can Google it out. So when you integrate that, wherever there is a change in RSS feed, you may get a notification.
Right.
So if you implement that, and the return object will definitely be something like Boolean. Whenever there is an update 1, whenever there is no update 0, that's where you can optimize your code.
Okay.
That's a basic thing about this observer pattern. And yeah, this is the UML diagram. An observer is nothing but just discard about this terminology, because each book follows a standard, each language follows a naming standard, so it doesn't matter about, some may call it as a subject, some may call it as an observer. What we can say is it's observable, it's observer. So observable always should have few things landed up. One, add, remove, one, add, two, remove, three, notify. And add will should definitely have an argument, a single argument that is to be passed inside it. Add in the sense adding your subscriber list. I mean, adding your another subscriber to your subscribing list. And removing in the sense removing your subscribers, just like EMP table that day we implemented adding and removing the employees, right? So the same way we can do it like this. We'll have to do for this observable code. And notify is something which does not require any arguments, because notify is just making use of the already existing list of attached list. I mean, the previously attached observers, right? Then how your mailing platform typically works. So now in this case, the observers are silent and observable is active. So this will be a typical example of a design pattern for observer and all. So this looks just like this. And again, it's a very simple high-level skeleton of it. The logic is not there. So this will be observable with three mandatory functions. These three notify is there, right? Yeah, notify observers, register, remove is missing, I think. I need to add that as well. So these are the three typical things that will carry forward. And then for the observers, you'll just have notify in a very simple case. So this notify will have argument called observable, because for a real-time thing, whatever we are doing is MailChimp and iterable, right? So their MailChimp and iterable are observables. So we need to know from which mailing platform we need to get the notifications, right? So that's why you'll have this argument called observable. And then notify will just grab this information from this notify, whatever it sends.
So, sorry, Harry, I have one question. So, is it like, for example, like I have a specific problem. So for that problem, do I need to use only a specific pattern, or can I just mix and match the patterns?
No, you cannot really do that, but you can do that. So the thing is, unless you're not disturbing the pattern entirely, you can do that, as long as you are holding on to that. Because the whole reason of this introduction of patterns is very simple. You're writing a logic, it is not optimized. There is another developer which comes to your setup and he cannot understand this logic, or it is not optimized. You need to debug every code. So do not mix up the patterns too much. If you say, in ideal case, take up a single pattern and then implement it. If it is not sufficing, or if it is not satisfying all your requirements, I would say that you have taken a wrong pattern. But again, as I've told you, there are 5 structural patterns, I mean creational patterns, right? So of all these 5 creational patterns, you will choose one. It's not a big deal. Of all those 7 structural patterns, you'll choose one. And of all these 11 behavioral patterns, you'll choose one. So with this clubbing of these design patterns, your code will be implemented.
Right. So I mean, it's mandatory that I have to use all the 3 different types of patterns in order to get my code working.
Again, yes, in ideal case, yes. If you see here, this is just not okay. These are just not 5 and 7 and 11. There are a lot of design patterns. So these are baselines you can follow to start with. So these guys are actually publishing all these things. In each paper, I'm sure there is a new design pattern that will be coming on. So if you see this lazy initialization, multi-ton object pool is there. These two are new models in this resource acquisition. So these are all creational patterns, but there are only 5 when you speak about this GAOF model, gang of 4, right? So the thing is, now it has become 3, 3, 6, 3, 9, 10. But the gang of 4, which we spoke about earlier, is just about this 5. So I'd say don't mess your brains too much. Just understand how a pattern works on a higher level, and then go dig deep into it on the implementation. On the implementation part, because the code is already available. The template skeleton is of each pattern is already available. But the whole context is, when you are trying to design a framework, you need to have a grip of all these patterns, so that you will take a specified thing. I mean, what is right for you, and you can also prepare your own design pattern, provided that you know it is optimized. So if you speak about this 3-tier architecture, there's something called data layer, logic layer, and then presentation layer. I mean, data tier. Oh gosh, maybe this is another one I ended up into. Yeah, this is the one. So this is all what is our bother is about. So we bother about these 3 tiers whenever you're building a software, and all these 3 tiers will come into picture with one or the other design patterns. But this presentation layer tier is about a bit more higher level. So we'll have some other architectures built for that, like JTE architectures, or some other design sophisticated patterns, of which we have something called MVC pattern that will give you a window on, or a glance on, how your React.js is built on, or Django is built on, or Python frameworks is built on, or so whatever you are seeing, or whatever you are trying to make use of the architectures for UI patterns, that was related to this presentation.
Okay.
But the backend development, software development, engineering, all these things are long. I'd say this second one. Data tier is about all related to data optimizations and stuff like that. So that's a brief about creational design patterns. When you want to speak about builders, sure, I have another one. So builder is nothing but it's a kind of methods which are helping your class, your parent class, to boast itself. In the sense, you'll be building a very beautiful class with the help of different workers. In the sense, a very complex object built by using simpler objects. What I can say is, let's show a sample implementation. Have you been into creation of blogs or developing websites, something like that?
No, but actually I intend to create my portfolio, because people have been in interviews, like the first thing they ask is like share my portfolio.
Oh, it happens like that in UK?
Yeah, because I mean, I work on ClickView on the reporting side. They wanted to see the visualizations.
It means you need to create a website and then visualize that?
I mean, they expect me to share it through a link.
like
Yeah,
ClickSense, it has got like a cloud based, so I can create the visuals in ClickSense, but they
oh,
want that needs
that
to
will
be
be a
shared.
public link.
Sorry.
That will be a public link. You click to your report.
Yeah, that will be a public link. So yeah, but it has got limit, like I cannot share with more than 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a restriction. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I work on Power BI, I work on ClickView, I work on ClickSense. So I just wanted to embed all the work I have created into one single
Hmm.
uh,
Okay.
space and share it to people.
This is one of my websites uh,
Mm-hmm.
that I've designed. Just a second. Okay. I was just trying to show you the builder implementation. Yeah. So yeah. So this is just a web page that I'm opening now. I mean, from home page to web page, I'm just scrolling out. Yeah. So this is just a web page. We call every web page as a post. I mean, it depends on how you call it. So there is a builder. I mean, it's a very really complex thing. Header. I just intentionally left the side parts of ads to come up, and then the footer, and then the menu. Menu has to be sticking on when we are scrolling it in here like this, and this should be always active, and it should work, and it also should uh, be compatible with CSS and HTML all the time.
Yeah.
So it demands something called builder in this case.
Okay.
So I just gave a link for this builder. It looks like this. This is all container objects.
Uh-huh.
Whenever I create something, okay. Hold on just for maybe we'll take a 5 minute break.
All right. I think we have to wrap up in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, okay, okay. Hold on a second then. I'll be going out.
Yeah.
Another one. Okay, fine. So these are all the container elements. When I just create a container here, these are the options that we give. So this looks like a very similar, simple task. So you take an HTML code, if plus is pressed out. I mean, the get element of that action. There is something called
Mhm.
action.
Yeah.
If it returns 1 or 0, it's we can do something. So if it returns 1, create this layout. If it returns 2, create this layout. This is a very simple piece of code, but
Hmm.
if we add all those flexibilities or availabilities or all these options, and then we create this entire set of builder.
Hmm.
So this looks a bit easier to do, but it has got a lot of functionality. So we can add a custom CS, we can edit settings. It means you are doing monkey patching here. So if you are editing the settings, you can change the source code only related to this web page, just like method overriding of your core methods. But you're not actually touching your core methods. You're importing or
Hmm.
inputting those core methods and then uh, changing the logic
Hmm.
like that. And then we also have this library option where we can have all these containers templates. If at all you create a template that you think that it is reusable, you can upload it as like this. Say this, I mean, if you think that this is reusable template, I can save it like that over there. So this is just pretty much one of my blogs, which we landed it up just for Google AdSense. That's the story about this builder method. So simple objects like this, even so for example, I create like this, and when I go for elements, these are all kinds of elements that I can create. For example, there's something called image carousel. Let's say you can add images like this, add an image, add another image like that, and the features of that image. This is just a click of buttons, but in the background we have developed a code to actually perform the logic. It's like that.
So on the, I mean, have you used a JavaScript to do the front-end coding?
Yes, actually this is a kind of a mixture. I basically use Django, but here I used old PHP framework. This is built on PHP framework. This is not built now. It's been maybe 20 months ago. It's been 1.5 years or maybe like that. So it was built on PHP framework. I do have another thing built on Django. It's like that. Yep. So that's about the builder pattern. It has some kind of features. So for example, if you have a hotel, if you want to prepare the pattern for that. So for example, the items in that hotel will be your classes, your interface classes. And then the menu card, you'll be preparing it as per the order, will be the combination of the available items, right? So that's how you'll choose the combinations, and then combinations in the sense here concrete classes, the ones which are using the logic. So they'll take some interface classes. I mean the contents of your restaurant, pizza, burger, Coke, tequila, whatever it is. So it's like that. So for builder patterns, how a sample code looks like, you can always refer to this one. Harry1180 is my private repository actually, so you cannot clone it, but you can download these. Anyways, these are not like, I don't wanted to waste much time. I just wrote the copy pasted the templates of it. So there's no much logic inside this. These are just templates available in the market.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when to, I mean, the main thing I have to figure out is like when to use.
Exactly. So the use cases we are discussing, right? So you need to remember those. If at all you need to study two things: how your code is behaving truly, in what way, and how can you relate to what design pattern you can relate the most to your code behavior. That's what you need to figure out. Fine then. I think we can stop it for today, right?
Yeah, sure. So what I'll do is like, you have already seen the code. So what I try to do is like, I try to work on the design patterns and see in the next class come up with what could be the best design pattern that suits my code.
You can select a creational design pattern. You cannot select the other two because you did not go through those, right?
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead and we can have a discussion more on that once you get a lead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Hari.
Yeah.